Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week webinar from Trisotech. Today, we're building real-world integration with the Trisotech Digital Enterprise Suite. My name is Simon, and I'm joined by Melanie for today's presentation. And today's webinar is going to be a little bit more technical than our usual webinars. But if you are more of a business person, we'll try not to lose you too much in the detail. But today is really about the different integrations. So, hi, Melanie, how are you doing?
Doing fine. Hi, Simon.
All right. So on our agenda, we're going to talk about different integration that you can do with the Digital Enterprise Suite from Trisotech. So the first thing we're going to look at is data integration. How can you build your own, bring your own data model? How we're able to reuse models as well once you've worked on some models. How you can take the Digital Enterprise Suite and call the services that you have in your organization, how you can take the Digital Enterprise Suite again and integrate it in an event ecosystem or architecture. How does the Digital Enterprise Suite provide observability, the different APIs that we offer so that you can connect your system to ours, and also what capability do we offer at the web integration level. And we'll finish with some other technical aspect on how to extend the field language, and finally, the different deployment scenarios for your automation as containers. So during this presentation, please use the comments. Those are kind of different sections. So if you have questions, we'll take them as we go. And we'll also have a little bit of time at the end for questions, but please ask your question as you go. If you have to leave, or if you have some colleagues that would be interested by the content of this webinar, we'll also make it available in a few days on our website. So Melanie will be doing most of the work today. I'm mostly here to look at your questions and interact a little bit with Melanie, but Melanie, take it away with data integration, please.
Thank you, Simon, for that introduction. So throughout all that presentation, I'll be switching between the actual slides with some content and context and an actual demo of how to do it in the tool. On each slide, you will see at the bottom right corner where we are in integration. So you'll be able to follow which direction we are going with that specific piece. And at the top right corner, you will see the tool where most of the work to achieve that goal will be done. So first, let's look at data integration. So most enterprise already have some data lying around that they were working with through the years. And when you want to start your project, you'll probably want to leverage some of those. We offer different way of doing that. So you can import a XSD schema, a JSON schema as well. And if you have some OData connector, you can also import them. You can also define your own data structure, of course. All the tools support data structure, but the main tool to achieve that is the shared data model, SDMM. This is where you could define them. And we also support some accelerators to reuse some really business standard data point. So let's see how that looks in the tool. So this is the landing page of the DS. We have all the product here, the different tiles that you'll see throughout the presentation. So if I look at the shared data model right here, it's really the tool where data types are the first class citizen. If I go here in data types, I can go in import, and you see the different import we support. JSON and XSD are the XML format. And if you have other BPMN or DMN file, you can also import type from them. So to start, I'll import just a small file.
So while you're doing that, we also mentioned on the slide that we can bring in OData data types as well. This would be done through another interface when you bring the OData metadata, the data types would come as well. Continue.
Yeah, exactly. That will be done through the operation library, contrary to those, because they come with the REST call to get those data point. So I've completed the import of the JSON. So you can see 3 data types came in, so order, T-address, and T-customer. You can also see them here, which is the standard data type view that is available in all modelers. So the workflow modeler, decision modeler will all have that panel to edit data type. Here in the SDMN, you can actually drop those data types to create visual representation of them. You can create different diagrams to group them by type if you have a lot. Of course, you can also create more than one diagram. So you can just expand that to see what's in it. So you see all the fields that were imported. You see here that there were some constraints on the JSON schema that followed. So you see the different values that are there. And it created 3 types. So let me just rename that as T-order because the order are have a T, so will be more standardized. Of course, you can create your own. So we could add one more field right there, which will be, for example, the items. That will be for the sake of our demo, a simple string collection. So, and you can drop new one as well. It's also possible in SDMN to draw diagrams that are called data definition. So if I drop a data item, for example, and call it order, and I assign it the T-order data type, it's going to be visible directly in the graph as a data element that I can use in my different models. So I can now save that. And I have created my first data type. So if I go, for example, in a BPMN model, let's create a new one for the sake of this. You can directly go here and in the panel here, drop the order that was created. That came up.
Melanie, I don't want to interrupt you, but I'm getting some comments that the share quality on the video is not great. Can we try to restart your sharing with maybe a different resolution setting? Because people are having problem reading what's on your screen. So let me just remove this. Sorry about that. And I don't know if you can find a quick setting for that, for the sharing.
I have no option at all to change anything there. I see only what I can share, not the actual.
Okay. I'm also getting people that are saying that the resolution is fine, so I'm not sure where to stand here, but
I'm really sorry. Let's try it again. Sometimes when you just start at the end, things are better. So I'm not sharing the audio, which is fine. Because I restarted the sharing. How is it? Do you see it on your end, Simon? Is it okay?
I'm having a good quality on my end. I mean, let's continue. I mean, sorry about that.
Okay. So we were done with with the data type import. While I'm here in a BPMN model, let me just show you quickly how you can import your OData model. So those will be in the operation library under the import for OData. So that would be where you could import some OData connector that you would have. So I've slightly hinted on that, but now we'll move on how we can reuse models throughout all the digital modeling suite. So everything you do in the digital modeling suite gets indexed in the graph. So we have a semantic graph of all your models and their content. That allows you to reuse across different models what you've created. And in each module, you can see the dependencies, where it is used, and where it is used and what it is using. The graph is also accessible through an API if you are really strong in Sparkle query and want to access the data yourself. So we also offer that endpoint. So here, for example, if I just save that where I drop the order here, and I go to the dependency panel right here, you can see that it's used in the webinar, the order data type right there. And in the order data type here, if we go in here in the word use, we can see it is used in a few models already because I prepared some things ahead of time. And to actually reuse element from the graph, so you have the graph panel right here that you can navigate and go to the different model and drag them. It's also possible with a different UI to call reuse from the graph and navigate the proper element that you want. So there's really a variety of ways to connect to the graph, but everything is built together. Now, regarding
Melanie, I have some good news for you. I figured out what was happening with the stream. Like some people, when they connect, StreamYard got them in 720p instead of 1080p. So if they go at the bottom right of the stream, they can change it to a 1080p. I confirmed with mostly everyone that had contacted us about that, and it solved the issue for them. So we're good.
Excellent.
We're good. We are good.
Excellent news. So while you were resolving that issue for our people that join us, I just brought up the Sparkle API documentation. If you want to try that out, it's all documented how to access it. It uses the Sparkle query language, which is a bit complicated to my taste, so that's why we prefer to use all our UI. But it's really technical, yeah. So that will conclude that section regarding data integration.
But you don't need to use the Sparkle API. It's just there if you want to do some advanced querying about what you have modeled, but it's not required.
Yeah, exactly. And we try to make things visible without that.
Yeah.
And now we'll move into something really more integration, like how to call external services. Because in your organization, when you start working with the Digital Enterprise Suite, you may already have some complex business logic that is implemented in a service in-house. You may be calling other companies or the services to perform some action, and all of those can be done in the Digital Enterprise Suite. So we do that through the OpenAPI standard, often referred as Swagger, which was my older name a bit. And so you will define those operation and those services in the operation library. We have a bunch of predefined connector available to you. You can import any JSON Swagger file as well into this UI. And if you don't have anything but the documentation of the service, then you can create the entry point yourself. Each services is accessible with secure identities. So we use the concept of identities within all the DS when you need to authenticate. So those are kept separate from all your models for obvious security reason. You don't want to share your credential with a BPM and XML file. And you will create those supporting OAuth 2, API key, HTTP, even the Amazon specific authentication process. The API are called mainly through service tasks in the workflow model. So this is where you would be doing most of your integration. It is also possible to do that with BKM in DMN, though it's not quite standard. It's usually preferable to call them through a workflow model.
It's also not a good idea to do it, but it's always better to do it in your workflows than in your decision models.
I definitely agree with that. One important part of everything when you start to do some operation call is the data mapping. You'll have to deal with that when you do that. And so this is to assign the service parameters from your business context to the technical service you're calling and to bring the result into your workflow. So now let's move into the tool to see how this all comes together. So here, I already have a small BPMN model that I draw for you. So it's quite simple. It wants to find the location based on an IP. So I know a service that does that. That's called API stack, IP stack, sorry. So I'm going to just go in operation library here, and I'm going to import the OpenAPI. So I'm just going to select the file, and it imported it. So you can see the interface name at the top with all the operation that it supports. So I took a quite simple service for you to follow. So how you can add one would be to just create at the bottom my services, and then you can customize everything, create the operation by hand if you need to.
So you're saying if you don't have an open API, people can just create the definition of their service inside of the modeler without having to create an open API by hand.
Exactly. And I'm going to play a bit with that IP stack API just to show you how you would configure yours. So this one, for example, doesn't have any security set. I know that's not true. It requires an API key. So this is where you would set the security. So as I've mentioned earlier, we support HTTP, API, and OAuth 2. So let's put the API key here. I'm going to do the query and just put that there. And so now I have the security set up. I can look at the details of each operation as well. So the one that we'll be using is the standard lookup. So you can see here the description that came from the API, the method. So you can customize your method depending on what you have, get, post, delete, etc. And you see that the path is based actually on a parameter right there. So this is how you would set that. And it's in the path. And here I have the access key. So it was just passing the access key as a parameter. I'm going to remove that because I've put that in the security section. So now I don't need that anymore. And we can ignore the other fields for now. So now that I've imported it, if I go in my connector panel at the top right corner right here, I can see here the built-in connector that we already have in the tool, and in the scope, the one that I just imported. So the scope is what is in my model as a connector. So I can simply take that operation and drop it there. And now if I click here, I can see that it's calling the standard lookup operation in the IP stack API. We call those interface. Those are the services. And here is the data mapping. So I have the IP that starts, so I can use any field expression. Field is the language used everywhere in the Digital Enterprise Suite when you need to write an expression. So in those cases, it's pretty simple, mostly accessing field. And the response here from the service is, oh, it doesn't have the right type. Interesting. Let me just quickly double check that.
Yeah, well, so their OpenAPI has some problem on the definition, which the good thing is we can fix them.
So I just assigned a proper type with the IP stack response, so you can see that I just wanted to show you the content. So it's quite a huge stack, and you don't need to push everything in your model to do. So you can quickly extract only the piece that you need with the data mapping. So that's the idea of it. So you take that big object and only extract the part that matter. And you can see we have first some auto-completion to make that process easier. So then I took only the country, region, and that's enough for me. That's what I want to know from that IP. So now what's really good is you can test your integration right away in the modeler by hitting the play button. So the first thing it's going to do is ask me for the identity. So if I don't have any, I can create a new one. So what shows up in that screen will depend on the actual identity that is picked. So this is an API key, so it's only asking me for that key. If it would be an OAuth 2, I would have a different process to fill. So I'm just going to take the identity that I created earlier and use an IP and run that. So I can see that it extracted the information I requested. Something didn't happen as you wish, as you thought would be. You can use a trace right there. Really useful tool when you're building that. You can see what was sent to the service. So I just sent the IP right there, and all the body that was sent that was received as a response. So if your mapping doesn't produce what you want or anything like that, you can look at it, and you can even download those JSON payload if you need to look at them more closely in an external tool. So this is all available for you to debug your model.
Also, maybe before you move on to the error handling, just a quick note about what you did on changing the API key from a parameter to put it in the security and as an identity. This is important because you don't want your process model to carry your API key with it. The identity that we offer on our platform are a write-only store that you can use to write your secrets in, and basically we will inject them at runtime, but they will not be part of the model and accessible to everyone that have access to the model.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the whole idea behind that. So to end all error, you would use a boundary error event that you attach. You can define the error. So if I look at that operation, it doesn't even define the error that are possible there, but you could also add that easily and then do some error handling if something goes wrong. If a connector is used a lot in your enterprise and you don't want everyone to start importing things, there's a few ways you can deal with those. So first, the operations are also indexed in the graph. So if I save that, and then I go in the graph panel right here in my webinar, bidding workflow, and the OpenAPI demo, I can see the IP stack service is there. So this is one way. Others could reuse that. And the other way to do that is to add the connector in the admin section. So we have a connector section right there where all our predefined connector are. So if you want to clean that up because some of them are not relevant to your user and you don't want to clutter them, you can remove them and you can add some organizational connector that will only be available to your instance. So for example, if you have something to connect to your backbone, this is where you could import the OpenAPI and reuse it. So that concludes that section about integrating with OpenAPI. So we'll now move to the event integration. So now we're going to talk about how to deal with any messaging service that you have in place and integrate that with the Digital Enterprise Suite. The main place to do that will be in the workflow model. This is where your orchestration will be designed. We support our most popular message systems, so Apache Kafka, Amazon SQS, RabbitMQ, Google PubSub, and we try to keep up with what's coming in to adapt with our customer needs.
And also the derivative from like Kafka, for instance, Azure use a derivative from Kafka, so it also works well with our suite, no problem.
Yeah, thanks for that precision, Simon. Of course, there are starting to be a lot more of those, and now that it's getting more popular. So there's a few ways a message can be used in the suite. So a message can be used to start a process with a start event. It can be used within the process execution to either receive or send message. And a message can be also emitted at completion of the process or when it reaches an end event. One really important part of event-driven architecture is the message correlation. So the correlation is how you decide which message matters to your process. So that correlation is based on 3 different elements. So we can use the message content, of course, to decide if the message is relevant. This is the fastest one. This is the best one to use at first to try to filter out as many messages as possible that are not relevant to your process. Then you can use what we call instance tags. So each process can have tags attached to them, and you can filter based on those tags. And finally, the last one that should be used after the other 2 have eliminated at the most process as possible is the actual instance data inside your process. Again, you can use in the event integration data mappings to take the message, the information that's coming in from the data, from the message, and use it as some operation business logic. And at the end, you can again send back some database on your organization base with the data mapping. And all of those use the async API standard to be defined. So now we'll look at one example. So let's open here the receive example that I've created. So you can see here Those are start events, and this would be an event subprocess. Write that. So events subprocess are during the flow. You can also use what we call intermediate event in the flow to receive events. So those are to and to send. So you can change them to throwing. So in the tool, it's catching to receive and throwing to send. So the way you would configure those, you can see again in the connector panel right here, we have the events panel here, where you see all the supported connector that we have. In my case, you can see the small logo at the top right corner. So I use Google PubSub, so you can see what's available there. And you also have in the execution ribbon, the event library. So this is what you would pick your connector, such as Google PubSub, and then configure it to do what you need to. So if I open the one that I've already done, you can see here the description of the service, a custom logo. This is what is showing up on the shape that are using that service, the host, of course, and the security. We support API key or two again for the security here. And if you look at the receive end of that, you would create that here, setting either you want to receive from subscription or send to topic. Now you'll notice that I didn't keep that original name. I name it receive order. So the action makes sense in the context of my process because it's listening to, in my case, what I call an order event queue. So try to change those default names that are really generic to be a little more meaningful in your own context. We also encourage you to, when the data structure is predefined and is not changing when you're receiving message, to define the data type. So by default, we will give you the basic structure. So if I just add a new one here, so you see, oops, sorry. You see if I add just another receive, that we have created default structure here, and by default it's a body and a bunch of attributes. So those are generic. All messages will have at least those two elements, can be empty, but this is the basic structure. Now you can, of course, change those to use your context. So in my context, the body will be a T order, so I've changed that. This will make the data mapping easier, and will make dealing with those messages more meaningful in your case. Delete that one so I don't get confused. So here it's just, you can just assign it in the catch event section in the receive order. You can access the data mapping here. So I'm receiving a message. This is an order message that I've created with a body and some attributes. And I map the body of it to my process, which is the actual order, which is a business piece of element that I need. And to deal with the correlation that I've mentioned earlier, you would just take a sip. So you go here on your event in the attributes and message correlation. So this is a start event, so it has access to two different filters. The first one is based on the message content. So in my case, in the attributes, I've put an event type, and this will only react to order create event type. So this is a parameter that will be sent to the message to know which kind of event it is, and I'll be only dealing with those. We have also the process exclude tag matching for start event. In that case, the order ID. Now that means that if a process has a tag, if there's already a process with a tag matching that order ID, a new process will not be created.
So you prevent duplicates.
Exactly. And to create the instance tag, you just go here in process instance tag, and you can see here that I have created one with the order ID. So this is what the exclusion filter works. And the same thing here, I have my my non-iterating event in an event subprocess. So if I look at the message correlation, now we have 3, and the second one is slightly different. So the first one is still the message content filter. So in that case, this would be to react to order updates. So I can base my filtering on that attributes. The second one is instance tag matching. So it's not an exclusion. I need to have that tag to react. So naturally here, I only want updates regarding my own order ID. So this is why I use the attribute order ID right there. And finally, the last one has access to the data. So in my process, I have an order. So I can check the status of that order to see if I should care or not about that message. So this is the final level that can be used. They are from the most efficient to the less efficient, but if the first two animated most of the process, you can then use the last one. So if I deploy that now, picking my entity and just deploy it. I'm gonna now look at the other part of it, which would be the send event. So it's really similar. So I will go faster on that one. And I threw a really simple one. So I have an intermediate event that is sending a message. So in the event library, same thing. I have my Google pops up, but in that case, I took the the send to topic. So you just need to put the address of the topic you need to push to. Again, I use the same structure. So my sending and receiving are coherent. Normally, you probably have more chance to have only one end. Either you're pushing or receiving from a queue, and some other service is doing that, but it's always better to align the data types. And so if I run that right here, and I say ID 7777, that got 777, and I just submit that with a minimum. So if I go in my service library here, I have my receive order process. I can look at the instance, and I can see that a new instance was created, and here is the tag. So it has received that event, created the instance, and is not ready. One interesting you also have in the cloud execution tool is the connector section. So if for some reason you're not getting your message, you can go here and see what's going on here. So interestingly enough, it says it's disconnected, but it did work. So you will need to investigate why this is not working, but this is why we have that panel.
So also, quick note, if you wanted to do like Trisotech to Trisotech messages, we also offer in the connectors under the Digital Enterprise Suite events, what we call user event. So you can send from one process to another easily without having to rely on like a Google PubSub or a Kafka external. So if really what you want to do is communicate between two processes, it's possible to do it there as well.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the topic. It's under user. You have the user send and receive events. So, and the same thing, you can standardize the data between the two. Can be an easy startup if you don't need to scale anything. You can start with that. And if you need to, if there's starting to be too many messages, you can then move to some external provider if needed. So that will be concluding that event part. And now we'll move to observability.
It's your favorite word, huh?
I did good. So now the goal of that section is to tell you how you can audit and see what's going on in the Digital Enterprise Suite and in the counterpart, the Digital Automation Suite and the Modeling Suite. So both part of the suite emits events that can be listened to. So one way to do that is to define emitters. That will be done in the setting app, and you can use message system. So the same one that I used just before in my process. So all the async API that we support are also possible to use to define emitters. You can post to webhooks. So either you use standard webhook, and we have some specialized webhook connector for Power BI, for example. You can put that to storage or like that directly in the console. When we are sending events, we are complying with the open telemetry support. So that standardized all application can produce log, metric, and traces. So yeah, you can rely on that. And when you have some digital digital distributed container. I will discuss a bit more on them later. But when you have DDC, you can also listen to the port to get some monitoring, and those are compatible with Prometheus if you are using that in your organization.
While you switch, someone asked if we would get the recording, so maybe they were not there at the start, but you will get the recording. It's going to be posted on the website, and you're going to get an email if you're registered for this session with the link to it. Otherwise, you can just go on our website and find it there. It's going to be there very soon. And yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Simon, for the precision. So the emitter is defined in the setting app. So I went there while Simon was answering the question. You simply click add emitter here. You give it a name. Let's call it Tech Webinar. You can then click next. Then you need to pick your type. So those are all the types that I've mentioned that we have. Let's take the audit one because it's the easiest one for me to share with you quickly. And then you can say, oh, make that pretty. You can filter based on the message content if you need to. And now you have all those topics. So now that's a lot of things, and you can actually see the documentation of those in the DES event. So you have that on your instance on the public API doc events, and you can see really the detail of all of those events and description, the message you are sending, and all the details. So this is how you can select what matters to you when you are picking them. So there's already in some documentation as well in the UI. So let's say, for example, I want to see what's going on with my services. I would put that here. So those are all the events related to service. If I click next, I have the different message that I can listen to. So the first one is the topic. Now I can say, okay, I want to know when a service has started and finished. So service start and service finish. So, and I can pick the environment I want to listen. Let's say here, I'm going to listen to the test environment and on all group. And then you can see what has been created. If you have DDC, you could take that definition to bake in the emitters in your DDC as well. In my case, I'm still in DDS. I can just register it. So we have that. So if I go in the test instance, and start any process and go back to my super monitor. We can see that it created the log with the service that has started.
So basically here, what we're saying is that you don't have to put in your processes anything for it to become observable. By default, everything you create will emit those events, and you can hook to them on an external system, or like Melanie just showed, in an audit file that you can pull through the API or download through the interface. So when you're building as a business user your models, you don't have to think about how will I be able to audit this. It's built in through those emitters, basically.
Yeah, it's again a separation of concerns. So the reason why there's so many tiles is in their tool is because each have their own responsibility, and we don't want the model to be responsible for logging what's important. You can do that externally. So this is a really important part of the whole design at Trisotech. So that will conclude that section. So now we're moving to the Digital Enterprise Suite API. There's a few ways to integrate your system with the DS. One is we call it often headless. So it means you won't be using any of the UI that we provide. You will create all your models through the Digital Model Suite and then publish those and interact with the API at the API level. We also offer the API for the DS itself. So things like looking at files, looking at versions, and all those things are accessible through an API as well. And that API is secure with OAuth 2. So you will need to create some client app to be able then to create identities to access those service or to just pass the proper parameter from your API endpoint. And we support a user account, so regular OAuth2 with a user account, and you can now create system account as well if you want something more generic and do not tie all the action based on a single user. So as we are doing for generic services, the Digital Enterprise Suite is also producing its OpenAPI file that you can look at to see what's going on. So if I go in the DS API right here, so this is really the Digital Enterprise Suite API. So everything that is going on here, you can even do something like look at the execution environment, what is there, post service to that. You can see the issues, the comments. So really, mostly anything that we do in the UI is exposed in the public API. Now, if you want to access a specific service, then you can go to Service Library, and, and look at the REST API right here. So this is the REST API for that specific service that is receive order. It should mostly be triggered with an event, but you can always post to it to start it. So you can see here the actual parameters that it is expecting. So you recognize the order here. It has an order customer, total amount, and stuff like that. And we have what it is producing at the end as well. So, and you can test all those API right there in that Swagger UI. You can manage the instances that are actually running, get the details. So really all of that is available to you if you want to fine-grain how to play with the OpenAPI. You can even create processes to deal with the DS. So if I open a simple example that I've built, so if you look at the panel right here, we have in the operation the Digital Enterprise Suite. So those are all the same thing that I've shown you in the Swagger UI. And we also have right here the Digital Enterprise Suite events that are there. So Simon already mentioned the user event that are customized event that you can create. And there are all the other standard event that we are producing. So for example, here, just for the fun of it, I've created a simple example that say, okay, whenever the webinar models are updated, I'm gonna get the URL from the DES and ask someone to review that model. So this is the kind of automation you could do either by code or graphically in there. We are also adding the service library connectors soon to that connector panel. So this can also be done. So just to show you how we identify. So if I would start that, I will need to create a new identity. So now it's a OAuth2. So it tells me the name, client ID secret, if we are using Pixie or not in that specific case, and your redirect URL. So this is everything you need to do on your side if you are doing that manually. Now to create those identities, you will go in the administration panel and under the client app. So you can create a new app, define the scope it can access, give it a name description for future reference, and the redirect URI where this is valid. So this could all be defined right here to be reused. And if you want to share, you can click on the app token button here to be able to share the token.
Or use the full OAuth2 workflow with them.
Oh, the full workflow, as I was doing in the DS automation. So the goal of that is really to be able to customize the DS to your specific need. Now, if you do want to use the UI, we also provide some web interface integration. So by default, when I've been testing, you may have seen a bit the form that I've shown on the left. So this is a dynamic form that is generated by the automation service. So it's available to when you publish a service. So there's a few ways you can customize those. The easiest one is the display properties on data type. So on the different data type, you can say, oh, this needs to be displayed in a different way. And this is all done in the mod directory. And the last two will be styling with CSS. So you can apply a CSS to either a single service or the whole instance. And if you want even more control, you can then define a custom renderer in JavaScript. So if I quickly show you that, so regarding the custom renderers, so if I look at the data type, for example, the order here, I can see here there's an enumeration. So I can go here, display, and select to render the input as buttons, for example, instead of a drop-down that we normally use. If I look at the total amount here, I could change the display setting to be a currency, for example, as an output. So let's say I want a currency and in Canadian dollar. So this is something that you can do. So you can save that. And if I quickly go here, I renamed that, so I'm just going to rename quickly. There we go. So if I just start that quickly, you see the buttons I've shown right here, and I can submit. And oh, I didn't put any amount, so there's nothing to render. And you see now the amount is rendered in dollars. So this is a really quick way to customize things. You can do more stuff like changing a label on yes, on true, false button to be yes, no, and something like that. So when you need more customization, this is where you will go in the service library and access the form in developer mode. So here you have different tabs that are showing. The first one is the CSS. So we have some variables. So if I just uncomment that, it will now switch to arrange. And if I want more customization, I can even change the whole style. And now it has a Trisotech style with a graph in the background and stuff like that. And you can save that to, as I mentioned, either a global level, so that means the whole instance, the environment, so in that case, test, the group, or the artifact itself. So only the single service would apply that style. It could be useful to distinguish from your test and prod environment if you need to. You can have different departments with different styling as well. So this really gives you control. And if you need more, you can go in the script here. And we have a simple example of how you can define custom renderers for input of type string. And this would change as a password. So that whole thing is defined in a public Git. If you want more details on that, how to create that, we even have some sample for you to use with React and Vue with some starter kit to help you start everything, and quite a good documentation of how you can do that. You don't have to do both the input and result. You can do only one of them to customize the styling. So that is all the power in your hand regarding custom render. And the goal of that is to make the whole thing fit in the visual of your organization. Now, one other piece that you can do to extend the behavior is to create a custom field function. So we already have a few of them built in the suite, so you can look at them before trying to create your own to see if it's already available. But if there's something that your user keep reusing and it's not really suitable for a BKM, it's not callable through a REST service, and you're kind of stuck and cannot integrate that easily, you have the possibility to create a field function. You can send us an email to say, yeah, I think I'm doing that custom field function. Does it make sense? Or do you think there's a better way to do that? But once you do that, once you created your own custom field function, it will go right into the modeling tool, and you'll be able, your modelers will all be able to reuse that. So I'm going to quickly show you how you could do that. So as the custom renderer for the custom field function, we also have a complete documentation on how to do that. You need two dependencies to achieve those. It tells you all about how to integrate your custom dependencies as well. And what matters the most is probably those annotation. So those name, description, and example will be used to populate the model in the web modeler. So here we have quite a simple example. That's something that's not in a field. It's a random function. So if you look at the source here.
You click on the wrong one.
Of course. Again. Random matter, there it is. So it's a pretty simple function, and you can see the name here, the description, and the example, and the code. So it's the static method that will return the value. So you can build that locally, and when you do that, you can import those in the administration panel. So you need to be a single tenant or a client host user to use those. So the libraries are right there. So I can add the jar. I'm just going to pick it quickly. Sorry about the slide delay. There it is. And I can add it. So now it's part of my libs here. It even tells me it adds 9 functions. So now if I go in the modeler, for example, in the web modeler, you can find all of those in the learn ribbon. So those are standard field function. And in the custom, you have a few of them that we already provide. And the new one that we just had is this one, the advanced math. So if I click on it, it's now part of the ribbon. I have the definition of all the function that it uses. So the random is right there with the example that you can produce, and you can reuse those anywhere you're using field. So if I just drop it quickly at standard script task and start typing math, which is a prefix to recognize our own function. Oops. And I could use a random right there. So this is a really powerful thing to do, and it gives a lot of power for your user. Just when you do that, you're a bit out of scope, but DMN 1.7 is now standardizing how you can contribute those functions.
Or you said is now will eventually, because the DMN 1.7 is not out yet. But
it's not out yet. It's coming soon.
Yeah, there's going to be a standardized way of doing that, which we'll adapt to, but it's aligned with how we're doing them currently. So it will be compatible with DMN 1.7 when it comes out.
And finally, our last subject today is the deployment as container. So this is really at the heart of when you do services. So up until now, I've been using all the service within the Digital Enterprise Suite. I haven't used any published container, but you can select one service or a group of service and export them as containers. On the deployed, they will support vertical and horizontal scaling, so giving more power to your one container, or adding more containers to suit the demand when a specific container gets on high demand. We also support flexible storage, so we have some that can be stateless. We also have persistent volume or MongoDB to keep the state of a process. Now, the structure of that deployment. So if you look at the left part, this is what I've been doing all the webinars. So I've been deploying my model to the Digital Enterprise Suite within the same container. Now you can take those containers, test them as much as you need, and when they're ready, move them to a production environment perhaps, and from that production environment, create your actual container. You can have one container that is deployed for the test in the environment, in the deployed environment, and then you can have another container that will be your production environment. So that way you can move your services from stage to stage when they are ready, and you can have, of course, more than one production container to suit the demand. So those are created from the service library. I could reuse one tab. Right here. So you see the service that I've created here. So I could select a bunch of them and say build container. Not all your users will have that action. You need to give the builder right to an environment to be able to do so. So you can build a container, specify your registry. Again, you need to identify to that. You can choose if you want to publish all the version, only the latest version, or a specific version. So this is the level of control that you have, and you control which service you access with the URL. So in the URL, you will see /latest, /1.0. Those are the version that you are using. And all of that is documented in the help section. I kind of lost. So if you go in the help section right here, and you go to the client hosting and the DDC section, you will have a lot of documentation on how it's expected to work, what it needs. The installation process is all documented with some L# to help you along. And the image that I've shown you is also part of that somewhere, right there. So you can have a reminder of that image right here about all the deployment strategy. One last thing I just want to show that I forgot is the promotion. So I've mentioned that you can have a test and a prod. So here, for example, if I promote those to my prod environment, let's say and I look at because I've deployed them earlier, I think. So you can test and in prod. So this is a prod environment. So I cannot delete things anymore. So this is really a control environment, so you can be sure that nothing there gets deleted, because this is from where you're building your image and you want to keep a clean slate and know exactly what's there. So we have that possibility to have a prod environment that only a handful of users can deploy to and build content from. So this is something that we offer for you. So we've made it to the end. So what we want you guys to remember from that, there was a lot of content here. You won't be able to remember all of that, but now you know what all the tools that are available for you to do your integration, from the data structure until the deployment. So with all of those mechanisms, we cover a lot in the architectural layers. So data, services, API, UI, events, deployment, and governance. So with all these capabilities, we hope that DDS will integrate naturally into your existing ecosystem. Of course, you may have questions. We'll take some time to take a few if you have. And when you're starting to build stuff, this is when the real question will pop out. Check the help section for step-by-step guidance. And if you're stuck, please reach out to support@trisotech.com. We'll be more than happy to help you achieve your integration with Trisotech.
So we'll take a few questions if you have. I know that some of you asked the questions while we were presenting. So let us know if you have other questions. And yeah, well, since you showed your dog, you probably need to tell us what their names are, because the people will want to know. Like, it's kind of the dog talks.
Yeah, wow, that one of them. I said he passed away, so it was Maya in Pixel.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm not seeing new questions come in. We'll give it a few more minutes. Again, this recording will be available on our website. And if you registered, you will get an email with that link. Also, remember that the goal here was to give you an idea on what are the possibilities of integration, not teach you each of those. The help section or some mentoring are the right way for you to learn more deeply about that, but at least you know kind of what is possible and what's out there, basically. All right, so Melanie, thank you very much. I'll close the stream. I don't see any new questions. So we'll see you on the next webinar. Thank you very much. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.